Halloween, so I thought now would be the perfect time to tell you a short story time of a paranormal experience that I had many years ago. I don't remember the exact age I was when this happened, but I can assume I was about 8 years old. So this was around 1997, 1998. When I was a child growing up, I had a terrible phobia of thunderstorms. I didn't understand it at the time. Of course, I was only a child, but once I got older, I realized that I had this phobia. I would get such bad anxiety if the weather forecast was predicting a thunderstorm for that evening. I would actually watch the weather as a child to see if a thunderstorm was in the forecast. And if it was, I would have terrible anxiety. I would almost panic. I would try to black out my window so I couldn't see lightning. I would try to put things over my ears to block out the sound of thunder. I would get sweaty and nauseous. I would get insomnia. I couldn't sleep if there was a thunderstorm. And it also didn't help that the house that I grew up in had the biggest birch tree at the front of the house, and my bedroom was at the front of the house, and right in front of the window was this enormous tree that would sway and bend and make loud rustling sounds whenever there was any kind of wind or storm, and it would just add to the fear of this very intimidating tree outside my window. And growing up, I never believed in ghosts, spirits, or any kind of paranormal activity, but I always found it entertaining. I always loved anything spooky, and growing up, my favorite holiday was Halloween, and I used to make Ouija boards with a friend with cardboard and black marker. And I think I mentioned this in another video where the planchette was a 90s computer mouse. So I was never afraid of the occult or paranormal activity. It was like almost like a friend. It was always entertaining to me. I was always comfortable with it. And I always really appreciated witchcraft, even as a child. So, back to the thunderstorm story. Now, I mentioned my bedroom was at the front of the house, and my parents' bedroom was at the back of the house, so the opposite end of the hallway of the upstairs of the house that I grew up in. Now, whenever there was a thunderstorm, in a panic I would run into my parents' bedroom and find sanctuary. I would always pick my dad's side of the bed. I used to always crawl into my dad's side of the bed, and he would asleep, I would just lie there. And if I did fall asleep, I remember him carrying me back to my bed. So the night that this occurred, there was quite a nasty thunderstorm. I remember seeing the lightning and hearing a distant rumble in the sky that there was indeed a thunderstorm ahead. So I crawled to the bottom of the bed, the foot of the bed, and I peered down the hallway just to see if my parents had their bedroom door open, and they always did. When you have 3 kids, you can't close doors. So I peered down the hallway on the opposite end of the house. So I stepped out of my bed and slowly started walking down the hallway, and I never turned on any lights. I would always walk down the hallway in the dark. And as I was stepping down the hallway, the biggest flash of lightning I've ever seen in my life. I still can see this lightning in my mind. It lit up the hallway like a strobe light, like those lights in soccer fields that look like daytime, like it's so bright, it's like brighter than day. So this flash of lightning lights up the hallway so bright it was blinding. I've never seen lightning that bright before. So it completely illuminates the hallway brighter than day. And this is when the panic set in. And as I was about to run down the hallway, I hear a man's voice. And the voice of this man was not recognizable. It wasn't my dad's voice. And I don't have brothers, so there was no possibility of it being someone else in the house. My dad was the only man in the house. And I remember hearing the voice and looking up, like it sounded like it was coming from up in the ceiling, like this direction of the voice was coming from somewhere upward, like it was in the ceiling. And the voice said, loud and clear, "It's okay. It's okay." And it was a comforting voice, like a friend. Like the voice was trying to stop me from panicking. It was like a paternal, comforting voice that was trying to comfort me from this flash of lightning. Now, since I was the only person in the hallway and this voice was as loud and clear as the lightning bolt, instant panic set in, and I sprinted down the hallway. I can't even remember if I was yelling or screaming or if I called out to my dad, but I bolted down the hallway, yelling or shouting as I ran into my parents' bedroom. And as I'm yelling down the hallway, the loudest blast of thunder rocks the house. So if you can imagine a child running down the hall during a loud crack of thunder, that will scare anyone awake. And both of my parents jump out of the bed, just completely frightened, like I scared the hell out of them. And they start yelling at each other. And I remember wrapping my arms around my mom's body, absolutely shaking and frightened. Like I was absolutely petrified, because not only was the thunder and lightning scaring me, but I heard this random man in the hallway that I had never heard of before, and there was no one else parents were saying to each other. They're just like yelling at each other too. I don't know what. My memory blocked out what they were yelling about, but I basically scared the hell out of them, and they bolted out of their sleep in fright. And I also was out there. It was the whole room was in panic. Let's keep it at that. So, as per usual, I managed to fall asleep in my parents' bed a little while later. And the storm passed, and my dad carried me back to my bed. So the next morning, what I thought was that the voice was my dad, even though it sounded nothing like him. And the next morning, I asked him, "Dad, did you see me coming down the hall?" Even though I knew that he was fast asleep and couldn't have seen me from the hallway from where he was. And I asked my dad, "Did you see me coming down the hall? Did you know that I was walking into the room? I heard someone say, 'It's okay, it's okay.'" And he said, "What are you talking about? I never said that." And you can imagine my confused 8-year-old mind. So one side of my brain says it was my anxiety or panic that manifested a voice to keep me calm or to try and comfort me. Because of the problem with phobias is they're very irrational. They don't make sense. There was no reason for me to be afraid of thunderstorms. I have never been hurt by the weather, or I never had a bad experience in a storm. There was no reason or explanation as to why I had such a phobia of thunderstorms, because there was no event that would cause me to have such anxiety about the weather. It wasn't PTSD related. Phobias are irrational in that sense. So a psychologist would probably say it was the fear manifesting a voice in my subconscious as a means of comforting me or trying to keep me from panicking the way I did. But there's always a but. The other side of my brain had me thinking it was some sort of entity, ghost, spirit, I'm not sure what to call, a disembodied voice in the hallway. I didn't see anything. I was the only one in the hall. It was strictly this voice. It wasn't muffled. It wasn't unclear. It was loud and clear, as if someone was speaking to me at a talking volume right in front of me in the hallway. I can still hear the voice in my mind today. It wasn't a fever dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was very real. Although I do call it my paranormal experience, because the two halves of my brain argue about the reasoning behind this disembodied voice in the dark hallway. this experience, I still don't believe in ghosts or spirits or entities. I still see it only as a form of entertainment, but I don't strongly believe. I don't have that spirituality aspect to me. I don't believe we're walking among spirits of the dead or the occult. I very much respect people who do believe in it. And I do watch like ghost hunters on YouTube, or people who catch paranormal experiences on their phones and post it to YouTube. But it is the only experience I've had. It didn't happen again. But it is still very vivid in my mind, and I still think about it time to time, especially when there's an extra loud thunderstorm. I no longer have the phobia. It suddenly turned off as I got older, like around 12 or 13 years old. It was like I snapped out of it. I no longer have a phobia of severe weather. Now I don't mind thunderstorms. I actually find them intriguing. Although I've noticed with climate change that thunderstorms are not as severe as they used to be. In the 90s, we had thunderstorms that would shake the house, like picture frames would rattle on the walls, and like that thunder was so intense that it would set off car alarms. Like in the 90s, like a lot of people had those car alarms, or if like the doors vibrated, it would set off the alarm. That's how intense the thunder used to be. Now I find thunderstorms are really short and less intense, where I live anyway. Some in other parts in the world will probably disagree. But where I live, thunderstorms are not as aggressive as they used to be. It's strange how the phobia suddenly turned off. It's probably puberty related. Once I reached a certain age, my brain decided to not be afraid anymore. Anyhow, that's where my paranormal story ends. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've had any similar experiences, or if you've ever had an experience with a ghost or a disembodied voice. Let me know in the comments, and I'd love to read them. But that's all I have for now. I hope you're feeling sleepy and relaxed. I'll leave you with some more fluffy mic brushing to drift you off to sleep.